Welcome again. Thanks for joining me this evening again. Um, I'm happy you could make it. And I want to talk tonight about facing challenges. Now, life is never a straight line. So we're facing challenges all the time. It can be little challenges. It can be the challenge of what to buy for dinner. It can be a large challenge coming up, maybe an exam in a couple of weeks, or a big decision coming up, or it can also be an illness, or it can be job related. So challenges are manifold and they are part of life. And well, one could say without challenges, life would be boring. But of course, often in this situation, we would rather not have the challenge. But it's also important not to forget we can learn from challenges. And whatever happens, however you decide in a challenging situation, there's quite a bit that can be learned from it. And learning means the next time around, you might do things differently, or you might do them the same. So we can look at past challenges and use them as helpful information in how to go about present day or future challenges. Now, when we think of a challenge, or when you're faced with a challenge, the first important thing to do is to put its meaning or what it means into a wider context. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, but what it really means is that you might feel in the beginning overwhelmed by the challenge. But then it's important to take a step back and look at it and say, or ask yourself, how important is this to me? How relevant is it to me? How relevant is the outcome to me? And how does it fit into my life in 20 years, in 30 years? Overall, how does it fit into the world? How does it fit into my relationship with other people? And that's an important question, because we can very often get hung up on little things that seem like big things, big challenges. So if you're facing a challenge and you want to work on that and you put energy into it, then at least it's important to know why you're doing that or what you're doing that for. At the same time, if you're facing a challenge, it's also important to take a step back when you're focusing too much on the outcome or the result. Now you might say the outcome of the challenge, or even let's say it's an illness or something. I mean, that can be important. That can be a life or death matter. But still, it is important when you're working on a challenge that you're focusing on working on it, because the outcome can trigger all kinds of emotions. When you're focusing just on the result, you're essentially jumping the queue. You're jumping ahead and focusing on this one thing in the future. And then of course, your mind is going to be so focused on that, and you're emotionally so focused on it, that it becomes difficult to focus on the little steps, on the things you have to do in the present. And you're always in the future, it's very difficult to work on the now. Same applies to the past. If you're always in the past, it's also difficult to work on the now. But the now is the only time frame where you can actually do something, where your actions actually can take hold, can be effective. So important is to focus on the process of the challenge. Let's say you have to study for an exam, and the exam is coming up soon, and something is holding you back. Or whenever you sit down, it doesn't work. Well, and it's important to take back a step. Think about what's the purpose? What am I doing this for? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for someone else? Do I feel I have to do it? Did I actually decide to do it? That's important. Now, even if you feel like you're learning something and you're not going to use it in the future, but you're doing it for a degree that is then helpful, that you can work in a certain field, and that's important to you, then again, it has purpose. But and then it's important to be aware of what you're doing that for, and still do it step by step, in little steps. People often jump ahead and they say, okay, I want to make the big movie out there, without making the short films first, the little ones. And that's important, because the short films might actually be your ticket to make the big movie. And the same applies. I mean, if you have to deal with an illness, focusing on the now can be difficult, because there can be fears, or emotions can run wild. There can be anger, sadness, fear, all those various stages, and they can all come in at once. But especially then, it's important. Focus on the little steps, and ultimately, those little steps in whatever you do will get you into the future. And if you can enjoy the moment, well, the future is made up of a string of moments, present moments. Then you enjoyed a lot of time. If you have a year of happy moments, it's a happy year. But those are all present moments, little intervals, which are strung up like beads on a string to give you a whole year. So when you're facing a challenge, important, stay in the moment. Think, what can I do now? First, what I want to do. What can I do? You can't do everything at once. So you will have to start somewhere. And sometimes you might even start anywhere. And maybe it doesn't matter even so much where you start. Pick out something. Start with that. And ultimately, all those little things will get you then somewhere bigger. Now, I mentioned meaning. Meaning also has something to do with how you fit it into the story of your life, or the story of the year or the month, and your social relationships. So we're talking about connectedness. And to face a challenge, there are two kinds of connectedness which are really important. The one kind is the connectedness within yourself, with yourself, and the other kind is the connectedness with the outside world. Now, the connectedness on the inside is important, because the more I connect with myself, the more information I have about what's good for me, or what I like, or what's important for me. What are my needs? What are my what do I aspire to? Or what do I value? That's important, because if you're putting a lot of energy into something, you should it should have value to you. So that's very important. So the connectedness with the inside, that means, of course, connecting with yourself. A lot of people are afraid of that, because they're afraid of the emotions they also connect with. I mean, you can't selectively connect with one thing. You're essentially connecting with the whole thing, yourself. So a lot of people are afraid of that, and I think it's important to realize this fear is a mirage. it's an illusion, which in the end, it doesn't, there's nothing to really to be afraid of. Very often we might be afraid of something where there's uncertainty and where we don't know where we don't know much about. And connecting with the own emotions sometimes can cause fear, because I might not know, oh my God, what am I going to find there? But, it's you all along. So you're not going to find more than you're on some level already aware of. On some level, I'm saying. So connecting with yourself helps you overcome and face challenges, because you're tapping into those emotions, but also the strengths and the resources that then help you to master, to overcome whatever is, whatever comes up in the future or in the present moment. So important is this connection, and the connection with yourself means kind of, yeah, I trust myself. I listen into myself, and this can be done, for example, also in therapy can be very helpful with that. Various kinds of meditation. There are lots of techniques out there, and other people can be helpful in this journey. Also, if it's a very personal, individual one, therapy can be very helpful with that. Now, there's also the connectedness with the outside world, and that's important as well, because if you're facing a challenge, chances are pretty high that among those billions of people on the world, someone else already faced the challenge as well, or a similar one, and you can learn from them. Now, whether it's talking to people, whether it's reading a book, whether it's watching a video, all those things can be helpful. Information in the end is helpful if it's meaningful, if it resonates. So the connectedness with the inside gives you information about your strengths, your resources. Getting back better to know you shows you a whole inner world that has tremendous power to overcome any obstacles in the external world. And connecting with the external world, with other people, can help you with the process, the skills to master it. Now, challenges, the interesting thing about challenges is there's certain things people worry more about than others. Well, and for example, without sounding morbid here, everyone's going to die. But why don't we constantly obsess about it? Why don't we think about death all the time? Well, I do think what matters is that essentially we all die at some point, meaning we are in this together. And if you're in this together with other people, it makes a whole lot of difference. So overcoming a challenge, and a challenge can be fear, your own fear. It doesn't have to be death. It can be even little things in everyday life. It can be the fear about talking to your manager at the workplace. It can be about a fear about something happening in a relationship. But facing a fear is much, much easier if you're not doing it alone. Now, when you connect with yourself, you feel less alone, because, as I said, there's a whole world on the inside just meant to be looked at and felt, waiting for that. On the outside, yes, there's a whole world out there as well. And not facing it alone can be extremely helpful. So sharing with people who are going through who are facing a similar challenge can be very helpful. As I said in the beginning, breaking up a challenge into little pieces and working on those can be very helpful. Now, this applies often to projects, but in some way, maybe it applies to fears as well, or when you're really facing a major challenge in your life. By noticing that within this overwhelming challenge, there are many little parts, and focusing on those little parts can help you to come to grips with the challenge, the whole challenge itself. Now, the ultimate challenge might often not be the things that happen in the world outside, but it could be what we feel on the inside. It can be fears. It can be ultimate sadness, grief. And again, taking it step by step, connecting with others, connecting with yourself, but at a rate that works for you. Sometimes we feel we need to take a step back and focus more on the inside, sometimes focusing more on the outside, whatever works for you. Important is not to get stuck in it. So if you feel stuck in something, it can help to try something different. And even if it's doing something seemingly random, like taking an acting class on a weekend, just get your mind somewhere else, talking to people, maybe focusing on something completely different. Distraction is often underrated because it sounds like, yeah, it's not really dealing with the issue. Well, yes, it is dealing with the issue, because if you focus your mind on something else, you can free up resources then to get back to the challenge. And also, you might acquire a new perspective on working on the challenge. So that can be very helpful as well. Now, ultimate challenges, the big challenges in life, are, of course, entirely subjective. I mean, other people might also see it as a big challenge, but why it is a big challenge is because how we experience it. And that's where the emotions come in. If you're feeling a lot of fear, or sadness, or anger, or grief, those emotions are trying to tell you something. They are signals. And if you can read those signals and do something constructive with them, meaning kind of something that helps you, then they go away. So whether it's sadness or anger, grief, or feeling hurt, it's a signal that says, well, maybe I need to put certain boundaries in place. Maybe I need to say something. I need to communicate something. I need to say no to someone, or I need to clarify what I want, what I need, what I think to other people. So communication is ultimately very often the solution to many challenges. Because as human beings, how we get things, what we need and what we want, is by communicating. I mean, the simplest example is you go into a shop and you just ask for something and you get it. And well, they get paid for it. But you are saying it. You have to say it. If you don't say it, well, you can order online, but even there, you have to indicate that you want it. So in other words, communication gets you things. And communication will also help you to overcome the largest challenges in life. Communication with yourself, internal connection, reading emotions, being able to take a step back, looking at that, not getting engulfed by them or overwhelmed by the emotions, because they're really information, they're signals. That's why it's called an emotion. It's moving something, it's supposed to put something into motion. And if you read that, and if you can use that information, then they can go away. And connecting with the outside world, getting the information you need to succeed, the information you need to deal with the challenge. And among those billions of people out there, you'd be surprised how much we humans share with each other, also major challenges. So there's lots of help out there, lots of skills, lots of ideas on how to deal with something. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants if you approach the giants and ask for help or share with the giants, with the other people who've maybe mastered something or overcome a challenge. So it is overcoming a challenge happening every time, every day, in so many millions of ways. And the universe goes on, the planet turns, runs in its orbit. Everything keeps on working. The world goes on. And that is why that's the outside world. And on the inside, dealing with the challenge is putting things into motion. And also acting on something. Even if you feel there's nothing I can do about something, well, you can still do something, maybe not about it, but something to make you feel better. Something that helps. Something that's a part of you. So action is important. It's very easy to get lost in the thought about why, or some thoughts of pathway that really leads nowhere. Good answers come from good questions. So the question why, when you need to overcome a challenge, might be quite pointless. So it's more important to focus on the challenge and focus on acting. Action. When you're working on a challenge, it's a good idea to have a plan. Now, a plan doesn't mean that you already have to know what's going to happen in the future, or that you have to plan out every step. Given the vagaries of life and the uncertainties, that's impossible. But what you can do is you can think about actions that align with who you are, with your needs, with your values, with your aspirations, with what's on the inside. And this is why I say connecting is important in order to act, because the more you know about yourself, the easier it is to act in a way that aligns with yourself. And that's important because even if the outcome is not what you want it to be, at least you feel you did it as you. So kind of you did it in a way which aligned with you. And we can always learn and develop better strategies of doing things. And this is why it's important to connect with the outside world to see maybe how other people are doing it, how to get maybe more information on the challenge. It's also very important because the more we know about it, the easier it is to do something about it. We might feel we have to do a lot, but in the end, we might not actually have to. And there might only be a little piece where it makes sense to do something. We might not be able to control everything, Often we might only be able to influence a part of it or a small part. And if you do that, then I've done what I could do. And I've done, if you know about what works for you, I've done what aligns with me. So important is on the inside, your values, your needs, your aspirations, what works for you. Because you don't want to do things that don't work for you, because in the end, no matter whether it works out or it doesn't work out, you're not going to feel so good about it. At the same time, you want to know more information about the challenge, more insight, have more insight about it. And of course, there can also be strategies from other people that can be helpful, whether you find it it could be even in a book, or it could be by talking to someone. You can find it online, find it in a video. Of course, always check your sources, or see what it feels like. And yeah, I mean, if it's an important issue, I would not just rely on information from one source, but get information from several sources and see if that agrees. And in the end, important is that whatever you do, it makes the world a better place, meaning it doesn't harm you, doesn't harm anyone else, and it makes the world a brighter place. So important is, when you're acting, to do one piece after another, one step after another. And it really is important. So to break up something into smaller pieces, into smaller chunks, and to work on that. And if you have a vision, can imagine what it is like to overcome the challenge, and maybe even more importantly, what you can learn from the challenge, then you might actually enjoy the process. Because there's always something to learn from anything we do, if we just look at it from the right angle, the right perspective. And when we learn something, that means it adds something, it adds information to us, which can be helpful in the future, or it can be helpful in what we do, or finding more meaning. There are many ways how learning from something can be important. So any challenge, there's something to be learned from it. And that means mostly the process, more from the process than from the challenge itself. So if you look at it this way, it's essentially living, and the challenge disappears more and more into the background if you see it as part of life, and there's something not just to be learned from it, but something. A challenge also means it can be in it an achievement, a mastery of it, something to feel good about. And achievement is maybe the wrong word, but it can be a happiness in working on a challenge, a contentment, a satisfaction. Important is to be able, when needed, to take the distance, that you can look at it from the right angle, from the right perspective. So thank you for joining me again today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.